motion to go back into open session? All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it, the motion carries. At this time, our state superintendent will come before us at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Molly Spearman, and if you don't mind, I'm going to come. I hope it doesn't affect the sound, but I'm going to come down on the floor so I can see. Is that going to affect our speaker? Okay, thank you. I feel a little better down on the floor, closer to you all. My name is Molly Spearman, and I'm honored to serve as your State Superintendent of Education. I was elected in November of 2014, and I can't believe it, the time has flown by, but I'm in my 4th year of service. We've come tonight. Normally I like to come and share with you and all the celebratory events. It's great students that are sitting here, all your accomplishments, and the wonderful things that students here in Williamsburg County are doing. And you have grown some great people. You're growing some great people, and I know you're going to have some great students in the future. That is what this is really all about, our students, and providing for them the opportunities that they deserve to grow and become the best of what they want to be, whatever their passion is. And that's what I want to see for every child in South Carolina. I live up in Saluda County. It's not that different from Williamsburg, very rural area. I live out in the country. I love it. I tell people I live 30 miles from Walmart, and I love it. And I ran for this office because I believe in public education. And I believe that every child deserves a chance, and it is through education that their greatest potential can be met. And I'll tell you real quickly, though, school folks can't do it all by themselves. They need the community. First, they need the parents and the family, a part of it. And then they need their school to be strong with great teachers and principals and district office folks, school board members, all who are working and dedicating themselves to be sure that every student gets to grow to their greatest potential. And they need a community behind them. And I have never seen such a great turnout as this. So this tells me automatically, when I walked through the door, I said, wow, Williamsburg County supports education. And the people in Williamsburg County care. So thank you. I really, really appreciate y'all being here tonight. And you have elected some fine gentlemen who represent you in Columbia that I work very closely with. And before we get into our presentation, I'm going to ask that Representative McKnight and Senator Sapp come forward and have a few words.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent, and good evening to everybody. It is really good to see us gathered. I wish that the circumstances were a little bit more celebratory, but it is important for us to pause every once in a while, evaluate where we are, and ask ourselves the continuous question of how do we move forward. I really rose just to express my appreciation to our superintendent, who I've known now for a good 4 years. When you were running for superintendent, I was running for office as well. And my, how the years fly by. I want to say one quick thing, and then I'm going to pass the mic over to my colleague. So please know that when rumors began to spread on the question as to whether or not all of our schools would be open for the balance of the fiscal year, regardless to their financial condition. We posed the question to our state superintendent, and I will just tell you all without hesitation, she quickly said to me that our schools will absolutely be open and our staffs will absolutely be paid. Hey. That is the state superintendent that I've come to know and the one that I'm proud to serve with. Thank you, Molly, and your staff for all that you've done, not just for us here in Williamsburg County, but the entire state of South Carolina. Last point for real this time. Please know that 76% of the funding for our schools in this district comes from the state. 76% comes from the state. And Molly and her staff have just been absolutely fantastic in terms of working with us, not only in this district, but all districts across the state. So, with having said that, I want to ask my colleague, Representative Knight, to now come, and then we'll turn it back over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Senator Sabb. Good evening, everyone. It certainly is a pleasure to see all of you here. When I came in from Columbia, I was worried about what I would see, but I have to tell you that with the outpouring of support that I see here tonight, the number of people here, that I'm greatly encouraged as to whatever comes about tonight and in the next few days, we are going to come out on top, and we're going to be better than we've ever been before. One of the things that I say to myself in the morning when I get ready for work, whatever day it is, there's a quote that I love and I live by, and that is, you cannot fix what you will not face. So tonight, we're going to face some things, and we're going to have to see some things about ourselves that we may not like. But the good thing about us is that we serve a mighty God, and through him and hard work, we can change and we can be better. So, it may hurt, it may be a gut punch, but we're going to suck it up, we're going to shake it off, we're going to come together respectfully, love one another, and we're going to get better. I believe that. So, there are no adversaries to pay back, no debts, vendettas to repay. We are here as one district, one people, for one purpose, and that is to provide an outstanding education for every child in Williamsburg County. Amen? This time we're going to turn it over to our state superintendent, Ms. Molly Spearman.
Thank you. What a great way to get started. Okay, so I'm hearing a little feedback here. Let me move over. We're going to share. I apologize, we had some handouts. We just didn't expect this many people to show up. So we will have all of this posted on our website at the Department of Education. That's ed.sc.gov. So you can get copies. We'll make sure everybody has accessibility, and I'm sure the district will be doing the same thing. So the information we're going to share with you tonight is why we're here. Not here because of any recent allegations. This has been something, as I told you, I've been in office now for going into my 4th year, and in January of 2015, when I took office, the staff shared with me some concerns at that time that were ongoing with Williamsburg County and your ability to serve, particularly through your federal programs. That's the money that comes from Washington, to serve our special needs students, our special education students, Title I students, of which most of your students are. That's a very high concern. So we have been monitoring and watching and giving assistance over the last 3 years. And we also, in the last 2 years, have gained some additional responsibility. The federal government used to say if a district doesn't do what they supposed to do, it only affects that district. Those rules changed. And now they say if a district in South Carolina or another state is not complying with federal programs, it can affect every district in your state, and we can refuse funding to your entire state. So State Department of Education, you got to start watching it more carefully. You got to give more assistance. You've got to monitor, and you've got to give an assessment. It's called risk assessment. And I'm going to ask Nancy Williams, our Director of Finance, and her office also does the auditing, to come up and just share with you very quickly our concerns about the high-risk assessment.
Good evening. Okay, as Superintendent Spearman just shared, the federal government, can I get a feedback? The federal government established a requirement that all, let's try that. Is that a little better? Okay. The federal government requires that all state departments of education, that they monitor, and they established a risk assessment process for all the school districts within the state and all the subrecipients of our federal funds. And with that, the department has established a process by which we go out and we assess your risk for non-compliance with those federal awards to make sure that you're in compliance, to determine your level of compliance. And so we've had that process in place for 3 years now. It's a tiered process, and over the course of the last 2 years, Williamsburg has been deemed high risk. It's one of only 2 districts in the state that has had that designation for more than 1 year. And so, the primary concern that has given it that high risk designation relates to fiscal compliance, specifically as it relates to your special education program and your Title I program, just as Superintendent Spearman indicated. And so that's the federal portion as it relates to your programs. As she also indicated, last year a new state law was enacted related to fiscal practices, and what that legislation does is it specifically lists some fiscal practices and concerns that, if not implemented, could compromise the fiscal integrity of a school district, and it established different levels of declaration and concern. And within that, Williamsburg right now has a fiscal caution pending. A letter was sent last week concerning this because of repeated financial statement findings. And so those findings have been uncorrected for the last 3 years. They're still outstanding. And that has risen to the level to have you in a pending state of fiscal caution. Okay?
So what does that mean, Representative McKnight said? Fiscal risk assessment means, that's why we're here tonight, okay? That means that as a state agency, we need to come in and do some heavy monitoring, heavy technical assistance, or possibly even management of the district, okay? So let's stay calm. Fiscal caution, the same thing there. Right now, it just means giving technical assistance from the state. It's a law that was passed. We just got that authority through the state legislature this year. So this is new responsibility. It's more on our plate to do. But I think as citizens of the state, it's wise for us to have that oversight on school districts and working with them. So it looks like we're working. I'm not sure if our being in front of these speakers is caught. Are y'all hearing us okay up in the corners? Okay. All right, so that's a little piece of it. And I want to keep moving along. Our goal is to be out of here by, I want to give you time to ask questions. So we're going to try to keep this to an hour, hour and a half total with questions. So I'm going to go now to Dr. LaToya Dixon. Dr. Dixon is the director of the Office of School Transformation. That is the office that goes out and works with schools and districts to increase the performance, student achievement performance of your students. We're in 34 schools across the state. She's going to share with you the work that we've been doing here in Williamsburg. It is based on test scores. Okay? Now, I will be the first to tell you that going to school and graduating is more, much more than just test scores. But they're important, and we have accountability. The people want to know how well their students are doing. How do we compare with schools like us? How do we compare with schools across the state? So we send out a school report card every year. That's been on pause the last 2 years because we're rewriting the program, I think, to make it fairer and more accurate. Because school should be more than just what you did on one day on one test, right, young people? You know, it's about ROTC. It's about dual credit courses. It's about career programs that you take to get industry credentials. It's a lot of things. But the part that she's going to share with you now is just on test scores, all right? So I'd like to ask her to come and share that with you now, and we'll move right through it. Dr. LaToya Dixon.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm going to share some information with you, thank you, Ryan, about test scores here in Williamsburg County. As Superintendent Spearman said, I'm Dr. Dixon. I'm the Director of the Office of School Transformation. And what we do is we work with our lowest performing schools across our state. Right now, we've been working with those schools that were identified in 2014, which is the last time we had a school report card provided to individual schools and identified low-performing schools. This coming November, our new accountability system will take effect, and we will be identifying a new list of schools that whose performance warrants our support and attention. In Williamsburg County, we support work in one middle school, M.B. Lee Middle in Hemingway. We have a transformation coach there. That school is rated as a Tier 2 school. So what does that mean? We take a look at all of the schools that we serve, and we assign a tier category to them based on the academic achievement in the school, whether or not the school has certified, highly qualified staff, how long the school has been in need of improvement, and the district's financial risk. Tier 4 is the most severe rating you can have. Tier 1, the lowest. So you can see M.B. Lee is at a Tier 2. The main primary issue there that we're working with is student academic achievement. Because we have not had a rating system in the last 2 years and we've been in pause, as the superintendent mentioned, we have been required to identify those schools that would be deemed potentially underperforming, meaning when we identify a new list of schools for low performing this coming November, in November of 2018, we suspect, based on historical performance over the last year or two, that these schools might also be served by our office. In Williamsburg County, those are 2 schools, King Street High School and C.E. Murray Middle School. Very quickly, I'm going to try really hard to keep this high level because this can get really confusing. But when our students every year come to school, there's this thing that happens at the end of the year, state test. Our students in grades 3 through 8 take what we call the SC Ready test in language arts and the SC Ready test in mathematics. What you see here on the screen is the performance based on the students of Williamsburg County in grades 3 through 8 last spring on the SC Ready English Language Arts test. In Williamsburg County, we had about 21% of the students who met or exceeded state standard. Meeting means on grade level. We want students to score on grade level. You can also see that we had approximately 79% of those students in grades 3 through 8 not meeting state standard. We want to see that number get better. And you can see we have work to do all across the state as we compare that to the state averages. In mathematics, similar performance. We have about 15% of our students, 15.2% of our students here in Williamsburg County in grades 3 through 8 that last spring met the standard in mathematics. And we had approximately, I can't see that number real well, but I think it's around 80, give me just a second, 84.8 of our students that did not meet that standard. We want to see that get better. We have a lot of work to do all over this state, but we definitely want to see more of our students meeting that standard, ready for the next grade level. In the areas of science and social studies, we give a test each year at the end of the year to see how students are performing, called the South Carolina PASS test. In science last spring, you can see that 18.6% of the students in grades 3 through 8 met the state standard in Williamsburg County, while 81.4% of your students did not meet the state standard. We want to see that number get better. Again, we've compared that to the state average, and you can see kind of how different those numbers are. In social studies, this is normally where we see higher achievement among all school districts. Usually students perform better on the social studies assessment, and that's no different here in Williamsburg County. 55% of your students met the state standard in social studies in grades 3 through 8 last spring, while 44.4% of your students did not meet the state standard. So that gives you an overview of how students in grades 3 through 8 performed last spring. They'll be taking those same assessments very soon, this school year, and we'll be looking to see how they perform, hopeful for some improvement. At the high school level, we give what's called an end-of-course examination. The end of course is given in 4 different courses. English 1, which students usually take in the 9th grade. Some students who are advanced will take that English 1 course as 8th graders, that English 1 test as 8th graders. Math 1, or Algebra 1 and Math for the Technologies. We give an end-of-course assessment also in Biology 1, as well as U.S. History and the Constitution. What you have here is the percentage of tests given in Williamsburg County, that's in red, where students scored a 60 or above. That's considered passing on this test. That's the floor, not the ceiling. But if a student scored a 60 or above, we count that as passing. So you can see when you compare how students in Williamsburg County have performed to the state average, there's quite a distance between that performance. We'd like to see those closer together, equal, or even exceeding would be great. I've included some data that looks at your particular performance of your individual schools. I'm not going to go through every single slide of this, but you can see how each school in your district performed last spring on all of the assessments I just talked about. The language arts assessment, the math, the social studies, and the science. One of the things I do want to point out, and I hope, here it is. One of the things we look at when we're looking at student achievement is we like to look at the graduation rate of high schools and of districts, and then look at the percentage of those students who are scoring well on those end-of-course examinations. So if we see a 90% graduation rate, we would expect that these courses, like Biology 1, English 1, Algebra 1, U.S. History, would have a similar percentage of students passing those tests. So you can see here, for example, Hemingway High School had a 4-year graduation rate last year of 92%, yet only 12.1% of their students passed the U.S. History and Constitution test. We'd like to see those numbers more aligned. That leads us to ask a lot of questions. Why is that? What's the difference there? What are some things that we need to be taking a look at? Similarly, at King Street High School, 80% of the students in the graduation rate, while 20% of the students passed the Algebra 1 test. Yet 80% of your students graduated in 2017, met the 4-year graduation cohort. At C.E. Murray High School, very similar number. One of the things you might notice is we have the state average of students who passed those end-of-course tests at the bottom of that chart, and then we have our state average graduation rate. You can see those numbers are much closer together. For example, our state average graduation rate is 84.3, and the state average percentage of students who scored a 60 or above on the Algebra 1 test is 77. So that's a much closer together figure than to have 12% of your students pass a test, yet 90% of them graduate. So what our office does, or what we've done at MB Lee, is we've provided a transformation coach, and we support teachers in providing them with professional development and helping them help students produce better outcomes. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. John Payne, Director of Special Education.
Thank you, Dr. Dixon. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Payne. I'm the Director of Special Education for the department, and I take my job very seriously because my job is to make sure that the rights of our children with disabilities in South Carolina are protected and that we elevate their voices. If we went around and had a conversation, I'm sure you might have family members, people that go to church, people that you know with disabilities that live in our communities. And we want to make sure that their rights get protected and that we continue pushing the envelope because we know they can do if they've got the right support. And that's very important to us. And I think about that, when I think about my work, I think about children in my own family. In South Carolina, we get federal dollars from the U.S. Department of Education to help pay for special education. To help pay, not all pay, but to help pay. We get money from our General Assembly that allocates money to us as well as local dollars that go here from Williamsburg County. And when I talk about my work, I'm going to talk about kind of two sides of special education. On the one side is the education part, making sure that children with disabilities are getting the services that they're supposed to get. If you've ever heard of an IEP, an individualized education program, it's the statement or a plan on how a child is to be served. And so we want to make sure that those children get those services for whatever they are, and they get the support and the assistance they need to succeed in life. The other part that I'm going to talk about is the finance part, which is about these federal dollars that we get from the U.S. Department of Education up in Washington. One of the ways that we measure, or we take a look to make sure that all the regulations, and let me also say that, ladies and gentlemen, there are a tremendous amount of regulations, and that the men and women you have as special educators here in Williamsburg County are always to be commended because it takes a special person to work with children with disabilities, and I just want to acknowledge that to you. So the way that we do this is we periodically visit a school district and we take a look at 12 big areas in special ed just to see how well a school district is doing. Every year my office visits about 16 or so school districts. We came to Williamsburg County in the 2014-15 school year to take a look at the program, and we issued what we call a findings letter. And it basically says, here are the violations to federal laws and regulations that we found. Now, in my years as Director of Special Education, we've yet to visit a district that we didn't find something, and that's not a bad thing. What's the important thing is we work together to get it fixed. And we always give school districts 1 year to address that. 1 year for us to work together to get these issues fixed to make sure that we're meeting the law, the requirements for special education students. So in June, we issued a letter to the school district, and then by August, we saw some partial correction, fixing some of the issues. February 17, we're still looking at some of those corrections. We've not been able to clear the district yet. August of 17, we're still looking at documents to try to correct the district, to kind of check them off and say, now you're complying with the law. March 2018, we're still looking at those corrections. Ladies and gentlemen, that's 3 years of time since we originally came to the district to try to get some of these parts and pieces in place. As I mentioned, we look at 12 big areas when we come out. When we came back in 2015, we found systemic issues, or issues that we believe were pretty widespread. Of those 12 areas that we look at, we found issues in 9 of them. And fast forward to today, we still see systemic issues in 7 of those 12 areas. Federal regulations require